The following program is brought to you by your friends at Podcast One.
Your life, your country. You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Podcast.
Oh boy, we have it all covered. Culture, politics, the fraud that is modern day liberalism, because it's not liberal anymore. Let's be clear on that. It is the most illiberal movement next to basically radical Islam on the face of the planet. Okay? And I'm going to tell you why. And why things are happening and unfolding the way they are in relation to the shutdown, the ignoring of the new caravan making its way to the United States, the media's coverage of that, and, of course, the ongoing nightmarish, slanted coverage of these Catholic school, high school kids. And even though the media know that they got it wrong, they either want to sweep it under the rug altogether, or what they want is to say, oh, well, we're learning about new developments. They don't ever go back and say, oh, no, we completely misjudged this. It's, oh, new developments are beginning to trickle in. I love that phraseology. So we're going to get into all that as well. Raymond Arroyo is with us. Of course, Ingraham Angle, make sure to DVR us and watch us live if you can, 10 p.m. Eastern, Fox News. Newt Gingrich is going to join us. Also, Bill Donohue. Oh, boy, we have a lot to hit with him. He's the head of the Catholic League, as now people are saying that the Catholic Church, specifically any Catholic diocese that sent people to the March for Life, should lose their 501c3 status because they're engaging in political activity and encouraging others to engage in political activity. The word online now is that they are tantamount to a lobbying organization. I guess all those speeches that Obama did in all those churches, you're going to have a lot of churches all across this country that are going to have to lose their 501c3 status as well, if that's the now barometer.
So speaking out on moral issues of the day is now considered
right. Well,
political agitation.
Right. So you can't actually hold up a microscope to what it is that they are doing to the youth of this country, the brainwashing and the slaughter in the womb. And we're going to get into what's going on in New York with this late-term abortion standing ovation in the State House in Albany. We're going to talk about that. That was one of the most sickening things. And I'm telling you, that reaction last night when they passed this, you can slaughter babies at 6 months in the womb their absolute viability. They have viability a lot sooner than that too, but absolute viability, and they're dismembered and they're destroyed and they're thrown in a medical waste bag, and they get on their feet for that. We're going to talk about that. We got a lot to get to. Also, the pot lie, big weed, lying to the American public for money, and shame on you Republicans who've signed on to these boards of directors and advisory boards of various pot organizations and big weed companies. Again, this is all about money. It's in a way, it's like the border issue, because with the border issue, it's the same thing. It's all about money. Yeah, how much cheap labor can you bring in? How many cheap low-skilled workers can you flood the marketplace with? How many cheap landscapers or nannies or whatever it is you can get for your rich friends? That's fine. And then if you can flip the script on the on states like Texas, flip the blue to red to blue, then you're gold. It's sickening. So we're going to talk to Alex Berenson, who's a huge New York Times bestselling author, on what he found out, the truth about weed. Again, truth about abortion, truth about weed, truth about the border. It's interesting, isn't it? If you talk about these issues, they want to call you a hater. You're anti-science. No. We are pro-science. You are anti-science. We are pro-liberty. You are anti-liberty. We are pro-life. You are pro-death. Period. How's that for a podcast? By the way, we want to thank all of our sponsors who make this podcast possible free. Mancrates.com, Stamps.com, Legacy Box. You're going to learn more about these fantastic companies and all the really cool special offers, including gals for Valentine's Day for that special someone in your life. Like, great stuff. So we'll talk about that later on. All right, Raymond, let's go back and revisit what happened in the lead up to this media embarrassment over the Covington Catholic high school kids in town last Friday for the March for Life, and how this turned into a bonfire of inanity. You know the bonfire of the vanities?
Right.
There's a bonfire of inanity. And how this was allowed to happen in the slow nature of Twitter moving to ban accounts that were responsible for pushing this false narrative.
Well, you remember when this dropped. You and I talked about it days after, Sunday after it happened. And we both came to the conclusion that what was happening here was both a demonization of the pro-life movement and religious-minded people speaking out on issues of moral import. That was one. And the other was that red hat, which triggered it all. Had Mr. Sandman, the student at the center of this, not been wearing that red hat, none of this would have happened. And so now we're seeing the culmination of that and the bubbling over. Well, it turns out Twitter on Monday disqualified or suspended an account. 2020 Fight is the name of the
What
account.
does that tell you? It's all political.
Right, which was supposedly created by a teacher in California. Well, it turns out the photo used in the profile was actually a blogger in Brazil. So because of that discrepancy and other suspicious activity they found surrounding the account, by the way, Laura, they were pounding out 130 tweets a day from this account. And it was, this kind of turbocharged political material. Twitter suspended them because they were the first ones to air and propagate that 1-minute piece of video, the highly edited video of Nick Sandman facing off with the Native American elder / activist. And then they put the mem on it. This is, MAGA-hatted teen.
Yeah, racist.
mocks
MAGA-hatted teen mocks elder.
Right.
Since when do people start using the word elder, by the way?
But then that became the running narrative. Everybody just picked it up. No questions asked.
No question asked about the elder either. He has quite a personal history.
Right.
Quite a personal history.
And that story has really fallen apart in recent days.
Yeah, so then they ran with it, and then as the Wall Street Journal points out today, the title of the piece is "The High School Deplorables." GQ's Nathaniel Friedman urged people to dox them all, make their personal information public. He should never be on Twitter again. He should be banned for life for having done that.
There are rules at Twitter against harassment, inciting violence. They're supposed to have their accounts suspended
Reza
or thrown out.
who I hit him hard on Sunday when this came out.
You're talking about punching.
Tweeted that the high school junior, had a punchable face.
Right.
Can you imagine if I said that about someone?
Or Kathy Griffin, who finally deleted her tweet after days and days, and after you outed her again last night.
Oh, no, I nailed her.
She came out, she finally deleted the tweet where she was asking that all these kids' addresses be posted. And again, it's working, Laura.
But they're scaring the kids. By the way, let's listen to Nick Sandman, who, for some reason, decided to give his first interview to Savannah Guthrie.
I have to say, that was unwise.
That was not smart. Sorry, but he has some PR guy who worked for Mitt Romney. That's all you need to know about that. God bless. But anyway, what is it? The kid he's a teenager.
I thought he held up well considering he's 15.
I do too.
He's the age of my son.
I do too. I couldn't have done that interview.
But,
so I think he held up well. But don't give.
Why did they drop him in there?
You don't have to get your ticket punched by Savannah Guthrie.
I mean, the Today Show is not what it was in 1992.
No. You got bad advice from people. He should have come on with me. I would have done a fair interview, and it would have been that would have been that. Instead, they set the narrative. But anyway, we'll play some of the sound bites. A lot of you might have missed this when he appeared. This is Sandman talking about the fact that, look, this is a Catholic school, that we have a code of conduct.
Did anyone shout any insults back or any racial slurs back at the group?
We're a Catholic school, and it's not tolerated. They don't tolerate racism, and none of my classmates are racist people.
Well, that I'm sure wasn't good enough for Savannah Guthrie. But I have to say, Raym, after watching it, look, he looks nervous, but he's 15.
Right.
Phillips says he was trying to diffuse the tense situation. Sandman says he was confused about Phillips's motives and why he was there.
At first, we were unsure of whether he was trying to join in and drum to our chants or what he was doing.
Did you feel like he was trying to get somewhere else to go toward the Lincoln Memorial?
I'm not sure where he wanted to go, and if he wanted to walk past me, I would have let him go.
Well, it was a fluid situation.
It was a provocative gesture, Laura.
It was. The guy was walking up and banging you.
I'm going to tell you one thing. I had this thought this morning. If Laura Ingraham walked into a woman's march with a drum and got in the face of a teenage girl,
oh no, it would be,
and beat a drum in her face, screaming in her face, I promise you, you would be off the air. You would be
boycotted off the air.
People would be picketing your house, right, and you'd be doxxed. You would be the villain. Why does this
guy get some?
I don't get. Look, I'm a Latino. You don't get special passes because of your bloodline.
But I'm telling you, this is what was referenced as minority privilege last week by yours truly. What is that? What do I mean by that? That because you're a minority, you get special standards, special treatment in the eyes of some. And it's not fair to other people. It's not fair to young people to be in this situation where you're a few inches from someone's face, looking at him banging the drum. Everyone should have their zone. Everyone should have their zone, kind of their aura space. Their aura space where you shouldn't be able to go that close to someone. Oh. And it's menacing.
Right.
And I don't think this kid knew.
It's rude. It lacks manners. But you're an adult.
It's meant to provoke. But that Nathan Phillips is a professional activist. He's been hopping all around the United States from Michigan to D.C. and back and all. He's spent some, he's a recovering alcoholic, and which is good for him. But he's a wild child. He was also found with 20 of his cohorts doing the same thing at the Basilica for the National Shrine, trying to disrupt another group's religious mass, a mass. So now, again, imagine if any conservative did the same to a Native American gathering, one of the Native American festivals. You tried to disrupt it. You tried to go in and disrupt it, and they were so scared they had to close it off, close the doors, or what have you. You'd never work again. So when I say minority privilege, that's what I mean. Everyone should be held to the same standard. You don't judge people on the basis of their skin color. You don't get into someone's face like that and implicitly or explicitly stand to threaten them. You allow people to have their free speech and their free expression. You try to do so respectfully. But that's it. Don't commit violent acts. Don't encourage other people to commit violent acts. Don't put people's personal stuff up online. And don't think because you think you were mistreated either presently or in the past or historically that you have a special right to disrupt the constitutional rights of others. Perceived or actual discrimination is not license for you to then set about trying to minimize or disturb or steal the free expression rights of others. You can write an op-ed, you can protest, but to shut down other people's First Amendment rights and either scare them or try to provoke them. That's what that Antifa does, by the way.
This is chaos culture.
This is chaos culture. It's anarchistic, and there's a Trotskyite feel about all of this. It's well coordinated, and let's not let anyone off the hook here about who was fomenting this. This was a left-wing, pro-Democrat, radical 2020 Twitter account that set the whole thing on fire, and all these fools in places like GQ and Reza Aslan and CNN Bakari Sellers and all these other people jumped on these kids because, as Joy Behar said, we want this to be true. She admitted it the other day. We want this to be true. That's what they want. It has to be true. They have to have, because circumstantial evidence exists that Trump's this or Trump's that or he's a racist. So we have to believe it. The moment we see it, we have to believe it.
Did anyone say build the wall?
I never heard anyone say build the wall.
So what if they did?
I don't think I've seen it in any videos.
After a review of the videos, NBC News could not hear anyone shouting that hot button phrase.
Hot
Nathan
button.
Phillips claims he heard the teens shout, build the wall.
Oh, yeah, I heard that.
First of all, they want to take away your right to wear whatever the heck you want to wear. A MAGA hat, a MAGA T-shirt, I love Trump T-shirt, because that triggers people. We're going to get into that, by the way. Okay? We're going to get into that. We are going to expose the illiberality. And it's kind of a left-wing version of Puritanism, because for them, purity is you must believe a set of beliefs that only they can say is right and holy and all correct, right? So it's kind of a left-wing Puritanism, because if you don't, they will shame you, and just like they did Hester Prynne. They put a big A on Hester Prynne for adultery. Right? Scarlet Letter. So this is Scarlet Letter. It's the red cap, Scarlet Letter.
Goody Ingram, thank you for that.
But this is it. But so what if they chanted build the wall? They can chant whatever they want. Mr. Elder Activist, he can bang the drum and the kids can't chant build the wall, which they didn't. But do you see what I'm saying? What they're doing? They're conflating. Again, if you chant build the wall, you might as well burn a cross on someone's lawn. There's no difference. This is crazy town. Absolutely crazy. And Sandman, Nick on the Today Show, continued in this interview. And again, Savannah Guthrie was trying her best.
What some people see is a young kid with a smirk on his face.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say for people who see that?
Reporters on the Today Show routinely have.
About who you are?
Well, people have judged me based off one expression, which I wasn't smirking, but people have assumed that's what I have. And they've gone from there to titling me and labeling me as a racist person, someone that's disrespectful to adults, which they've had to assume so many things to get there without consulting anyone that can give them the opposite story.
Profiling. This is the liberal version of profiling. There's this left-wing cleric of some sort. He's I sent it to you, Raymond, earlier today, the tweet from him, Bishop something. I can't remember his name. Anyway, he said in one of his tweets that, look, white people wanted to believe that any black kid with a hoodie was a thug and a murderer or a criminal. Okay? And he said, now you know what it feels like. So
his name is Bishop Talbert Swan.
Read some of his lovelies. And he said,
if the Covington boys were black, y'all would be calling them thugs and animals. No way would you be defending them. Just stop. And, he goes on to talk about, the inherent racism,
of
the white
hat.
privilege. Yeah, and the hat being...
The hat is a white hood. So he says, look, don't judge black kids on hoodies. You shouldn't do that. And he brings up Trayvon Martin, and that was a horrible situation, obviously. But how is it that we can't judge if you can judge? And again, I think the black hoodie thing is stupid. I don't think people should judge. I don't happen to love hoodies, but I don't care what color skin you're. I'm talking about a fashion matter. I tend to like them. But I think he's right about that. You shouldn't judge a black kid because he's wearing a hoodie. That's ridiculous. Some people do. And I think they do so, or they have done so, because it became it became kind of a uniform of kind of the gangster rap over time. And it conditioned people to think if you're wearing a hoodie, it's a gangster rap and it's, cop killers and all, it's all that kind of thing. And people jump to conclusions. Well, you shouldn't. He's right about that. But the idea that someone supports Trump and they want to make it the new racism, we can't let that stand. Because if you let that stand, you kiss this country goodbye. You're not going to be able to wear a pro-life shirt. You're not going to be able to wear pretty much any piece of clothing or say anything that contradicts their worldview. Because if you do, you are inherently, explicitly, implicitly, whatever you want to say, racist. How are you going to get young people to a movement like that if they're worried that they're going to become the next Nick Sandmann? I think that's what this is really all about. Michelle in North Carolina. Michelle, welcome.
Hi, thanks so much, Laura. I think you're exactly right about the trigger. I used to think that it was just Trump, but I really think that the trigger for the left is actually truth. I think that they have been so indoctrinated by relativism and emotionalism that the truth is driving them insane. And we have to remember, they were at a march for life. I mean, these are, and what I say is the left is so upset that these young people have not been indoctrinated by Common Core to believe the left liberal ideas, and that's why they attacked him. They attacked him because he's one of the ones that got free. He's one of the ones that is not being fed the Kool-Aid of socialism and hatred for America and hatred for the Constitution of the United States and hatred for Trump. That's what they're upset about. They're upset that all these people were there supporting life and supporting the president and supporting
right. I think you're making an excellent point. Now, the left can't really debate these issues in a coherent way. Not many of them, at least. I mean, if you really want to talk about raising the standard of living of the average American and how to lift people out of poverty, it's pretty hard for these young freshmen or, heck, even Steny Hoyer to argue that had Hillary been president, we would have had higher GDP, we would have had rising wages, we would have put China on the ropes as they are. I have new news on that today, too. But you see, they're not really arguing that because they can't. People are doing better. They got more money in their pockets. So they have to brand Trump something so toxic that even if his policies are working, you can't support him. Think about that, how wild that is. So even though his policies are working, even though, of course, the border's a crisis. So we got new news on that, too. Another caravan coming up, more concerns about TB and all these other diseases at the border. It's a crisis for the families who've lost loved ones. That horrific killing spree that the Dreamer went on in Nevada, that's a crisis. But they can't really debate that. It's only cliches. We're not a country of walls. Walls are immoral. But they can't really debate the issues. So it has to be the wall is racist. MAGA's racist. The hat's racist. Trump's racist. The pro-life kids are racist. And then they're hoping enough kids get so scared that they think it's not worth it to go to a Trump rally. If this was what it's like in 2019 in January, can you imagine what the campaign trail is going to be like in 2020? If this is what they do to some pro-life kids, I don't know what's going to happen as people try to enter a Trump rally in 2020. I'm telling you, they're gearing up for mass protests, disruption, chaos in cities. I am not exaggerating this. This is what I absolutely believe. If a hat is racist, imagine what they're going to do to people in line and out in the open wearing MAGA hats. It'd be ugly. And they want it to be ugly. All right, let's go to Rich in Ohio here on the Laura Ingraham podcast. Rich.
Yeah, from Cincinnati at that.
All right.
So, yeah, I have firsthand kind of a local media perspective on the impact this has had on these kids. The school shut down yesterday because of all the death threats. It was really nasty. And, of course, it's blanket coverage down here. But what's really sad about the whole thing is the kids.
Yeah, because for everybody who doesn't know the geography, Cincinnati is right near, obviously right on the border of Kentucky. That's why our caller just said that.
It's right across the river.
Yep.
And they were just going there for a field trip to kind of learn how everything worked and participate in something they could get behind. And it was supposed to be a positive experience. And they were there just waiting on the bus, and here comes an activist that, on his own, approached them. But, the way the liberals have it all set up is they plant these seeds, and if one person like Nathan Phillips goes up and creates an act, then they can make this whole indigenous land argument that feeds the whole border thing.
Reparations, here we go. Yeah, reparations,
Yeah.
here we go. You took our land. I mean, I get it. But liberalism has failed the Native American community. Liberalism, not the reinvigorate the economy version of Trump, Trump fiscal policy and trade and all the other things we're doing. No, that's helping all people. But again, you can't debate that, because if you debate that, you're going to lose. The left is going to lose. But they have, what the left has to offer? Venezuela. Go check out what's happening. Check out what's happening to Maduro today in the streets. The largest protest in I don't know how many years in Venezuela. It's all fallen apart. 3 million people, an exodus of 3 million people out of that country. A once incredible country, incredible economy. Done. By the way, a lot of people are thinking about Valentine's Day. I went to the drugstore earlier today, and I saw all the candy and all that. Seems like it was just Thanksgiving, right? But you try to plan ahead. Don't be one of these people who gets, oh, my God, I don't have any idea. I don't know what to get him. I'll get him a card, get him an aftershave. No, here's something really cool. It's called Man Crates. All you gals out there, if you want to buy for your favorite man, it's simple. Just go to mancrates.com, and you're going to find out why. Because you'll find when you go to mancrates.com that hundreds of gift options. And so you'll find the perfect surprise for the special someone in your life. And like you get personalized barware, so glasses with your initials on them, personalized pint glasses, bottle openers, pizza grilling crate, pizza stones. A lot of people like to do that. It's fun. And also Man Crates take on Valentine's with, this like really cool box of beef jerky. I'm telling you, my sons love beef jerky. They eat it. They love it. It's just fun. Like you get like food, like salami, all that. You get really cool stuff. It's really fun. And by the way, it comes with its own crowbar to open the package. So it's kind of fun. It's a fun statement. So just for Valentine's Day, you'll get 14% off when you spend $100 or more at mancrates.com. That's 14% off when you spend $100 or more at mancrates.com/Ingram. It's very easy. Unique gifts shipped in a really cool way, a sealed wooden crate. Just go to mancrates.com/Laura. All right, joining us now, we're delighted to be joined by one of my absolute favorites, historian, genius. Oh, he is. I'm sorry. There's just not many like him left. I know it's kind of scary to say that, but there are not that many true intellects left in the political sphere in the United States. You have Gingrich, Pat Buchanan, you got Conrad Black, who's writing, he's just brilliant, but not many, really, not with real experience. Newt Gingrich joins us now. Newt, got a lot to talk to you about. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. With that kind of build-up, I'll come on anytime. That just sounds pretty good.
Newt, when I really like someone, I really like them. When I really don't like someone, I mean not them as a person, but their views. I really don't like their views. So when I like you, I really, really like you. All right, let's talk first about this rush to judgment against these students, and beyond the developments about how this is all a big lie and no one was chanting racist things, and this activist is a rabid left-wing loon, which we learned more about. Beyond that, what is this really all about? What's the end game for the left in singling out Catholic pro-life kids who obviously support the president? What do they really want?
Well, the modern left believes in tribalism. So you've had 3 Democratic senators explain that if you're Catholic, you probably really shouldn't be a U.S. judge because your values are wrong. You have people in news media who hate the church. And you have a general willingness to condemn people and stereotype. it's a little bit like the attitude towards Trump. There are liberals who wake up every morning saying, I know he did something terrible. What was it? But it's just automatic. So here you have a case where these young people were apparently, when you see the full 2-hour video, they were amazingly responsible, very, very nice. Yet even their own school fell susceptible to the initial wave of panic and talked about expelling them, about all sorts of things, when there was no information, which is also part of what's going on. This is the Duke lacrosse team all over again and other cases. If you are the wrong kind of person, which generally means white and male, we know you did something bad automatically. And if you're the right kind of person, we know that you couldn't have done something wrong, and therefore we automatically are for you. And that's sort of the state of the current culture.
Well, what I think they really want to do, the left and the media who support them and cover for them, I think they want to make conservatism, not just Trump, but the pro-life movement, conservatism, so toxic and so charged with racial connotations and so forth that young people become almost scared to be part of it. It's a type of profiling that they're doing of kids wearing MAGA hats, and if you're white, you look a certain way. It's like the deplorables, the unwashed. They're the lepers of the culture and politics. So the young kids coming up, even if they kind of believe this stuff, might not want to go to a march. They might not want to go to a political rally that's supporting a Republican, because the Lord knows what's going to happen to them. I think it's an attempt to intimidate the next generation away from conservative ideals.
Well, and it's done by the broadest kind of very strong moral language. I mean, you're xenophobic, you're racist, you're Islamophobic, you're homophobic. I mean, whatever it is, all these get wrapped together, and then you can't have a conversation. And so I think you're right. There's been a very big effort on the left in both the news media, the Hollywood community, and the academic world to create a framework in which you almost feel bad if you actually believe what you actually believe.
And by the way, some of these freshman congresswomen, Newt, are so rabid, so out there, that they choose to jump on this issue, tie it all to Trump. And this Ilhan Omar, who is a historic first Muslim American representative, she's from Minnesota, she tweeted out yesterday that the boys were protesting a woman's right to choose and yelled, "It's not rape if you enjoy it." They were taunting 5 black protesters, etc. Well, all of that was false. Someone said that was not one of the Covington kids. It's not rape if you enjoy it. Obviously talking about consent, but poorly, stupidly said. And no one was taunting the black protesters who were screaming incest babies and ridiculing Catholic priests. And she finally deleted the smear, but only knew when I tweeted in response to her, wrong. Kids screaming that wasn't a Covington student. Will she correct this tweet, or do freshman Democratic congresswomen get held to different standards? And the hashtag smear machine. Newt, what if I had done something like that? Do you think I'd still be on the air?
No, and of course that's the double standard that exists right now. One of the more radical Democratic freshmen was told that her facts were wrong, and she said, well, that doesn't matter because I'm morally right. And if I'm morally right, that overrides facts. And I think they actually believe it. I don't think this is just stuff they say. Mm-hmm. I think they really live in their own minds in a world where, as long as they're morally pure, who are the rest of us to complain?
Over the weekend, you had Bernie Sanders making this comment.
Today we talk about justice, and today we talk about racism. And I must tell you it gives me no pleasure to tell you that we now have a president of the United States who is a racist.
This is a presidential candidate. And then they add that the MAGA hat is like a KKK hood. But we wonder why this is the state of affairs, and they blame Trump for it, of course.
Well, I think that in their mind, they're totally correct. I think people underestimate the degree to which we're now in a cultural civil war. People on the left say things that are objectively crazy, but inside their worldview make perfect sense. And this is building towards, I think, an enormous crisis for the society at large. I mean, as I said a while ago, and I wrote a newsletter about this stuff, you had 3 Democratic senators basically saying you can't really be Catholic and serve as a U.S. judge.
Right.
Now, for some reason, blatant anti-Catholicism is not bigotry. And yet what they said, I think, was fully as bigoted as anything that got Steve King in trouble. But the news media just glosses over it. And I think that's because the news media is in their world, on their side, and that we're drifting towards some very intense, I think, confrontations.
Newt, I got to talk to you about the shutdown, and we have another migrant caravan with thousands in it demanding entry into the United States. They busted into Mexico. Mexico's clearly not doing really much of anything, contrary to what we thought, that they were working with us. But they're going to keep coming and coming and coming until we have asylum reform passed, until we have a wall and all the other things we need. But we're in this standoff, and how does this get solved? What should the president do if you were advising him?
Well, I think the president ought to continue to build pressure on the objective fact of criminals coming across the border, and about human trafficking and about drugs, and continue to pound away at it. And I think that you see some initial breaks already with individual Democrats starting to say, look, I can vote for the wall. I can, we got to do something to get this solved. And I think if the president stands firm, he will presently win. I think the commitment they've made now on the Dreamers was a step towards getting Democrats to vote for him. And I think at some point in the very near future, you're likely to see some kind of agreement, which if you have divided government, everybody's got to win a little bit or nothing gets done. But I think that the Pelosi hardline position will lose. And I think the real model is to think of Kevin McCarthy plus 30 Democrats being the majority. That's when Reagan was president. We didn't get much out of Tip O'Neill, but we were able to beat him on the floor. And that enabled us to continue to govern. And I think that's got to be the model that Trump follows, to figure out, can I find 7 Democrats in the Senate? Can I find 30 Democrats in the House? And ignore the leadership. Mm-hmm. Just up front stipulate the leadership is never going to be good to Trump, because they can't be. Their activist wing won't let them be.
So the question is, how do you whip those votes? How do you get those votes? And because they'll point to public opinion polls that CBS online poll, whatever, 2/3 of the country blame Trump for the shutdown. So they keep whipping those reports, even though I happen to have talked to a lot of people across the country, and people aren't blaming it. There have been at least a dozen House members already who've said they could vote for something. And we're just, you get to a point where you're just fed up with it. They're fed up watching their leaders not do anything. Mm-hmm. And that gradually grinds away at them. Yeah, well, I hope there's, I hope there's enough moderate Democrats. Newt, before we let you go, the State of the Union, the president and the White House planning to go ahead with it. But I guess the details are up in the air. Anything?
I thought it was significant that the number 2 Democrat, Steny Hoyer, said he thought that they ought to go ahead and give it, that they ought to have the president come. Now, I predict if they do have the president come, it'll be the most raucous reception in the history of the State of the Union. I mean, the idea of this new freshman left wing sitting through a speech by Donald Trump.
No, they're going to scream.
It will truly be a spectacle.
Oh, no. They want to make it a spectacle. They're going to turn their backs or not show up or boo or I mean, yeah, look, if they're sending out tweets like the one that Ilhan Omar sent out last night, if they're sending out these tweets and they have these emojis, I mean, they're like they're 13 years old, these tweets. This is like a 13-year-old would just jump on these things. There's not extremely sophisticated stuff, but it's the new generation of activists. It's Obama community activism, community organizing with social media and with a really strong ingredient of radicalism. I mean, Obama's a moderate compared to these folks, but they're all pushing him.
That's right.
More to the left too. I mean,
That's
he's
right.
sounding more left wing every
even
day.
Nancy Pelosi. Remember, Pelosi was spent her entire career as a San Francisco liberal, and now she's under pressure from her left. I mean, think about how disorienting that is.
Hey, Newt, have you seen any of the movies nominated for the Academy Awards? We're looking at the list of the films.
I don't know who's been nominated, but I don't think I have.
Well, things like Green Book,
Black Panther.
What else? Favorite.
The Favorite.
Like, I keep looking at these movies. I don't think I've seen one of them.
Vice.
Well, that's about Cheney. So one's about in Roma. So it's about immigration, Cheney, racial issues, and it's become a panoply of left-wing causes that in movies that. And Black Panther made a lot of money, but most of these are art house films that just nobody sees. It's wild.
But they express the deeply held values of the Hollywood community, and it makes them feel good. I mean, somebody once said, when you make enough money in Hollywood, the next stage is to have sort of feeling good about yourself by making the kind of films that your friends will like. And it doesn't matter. Since you've already made the money, it doesn't matter. But nobody's going to see them.
Oh, no, it's just ridiculous.
It's just, it's a different world. It's not the world you and I grew up in.
No, it's not. And we have to, I think it's easy to get discouraged, and people come up to me and they do get discouraged. And we have to say to them, look, every generation has had to fight for freedom and liberty, and this is your chance to do that. And you can't get demoralized. But I think this idea that people should be in a defensive crouch and not expose what the left is doing is, forget it. I mean, you got to expose this, and were it not for people like you and Fox News and talk radio and podcasts, I mean, I don't know where we'd be. I really don't.
Well, I think that's right, and I think we're living in an era where we're literally going to have to fight this out. And the other side believes deeply what they believe, and they are prepared to fight for it. And we're going to have to show the same level of courage.
How's Callista doing? Is she loving her job? Ambassador to the Holy See?
She's working very, very hard. She loves being the ambassador to the Vatican. As a devout Catholic, it's very hard to imagine it being better than what she's living through. And she's fascinated by all the different things that are going on. The Vatican actually is a worldwide post because the church has 1,300,000,000 people. It's in every country in the world. So every single day for her is a new education. It's remarkable. I'm very proud of her. She's really doing well.
Well, and Newt is on a plane a lot, by the way. He is traveling. Oh my God. Newt, well, you get all your reading done. You get so much work done on a plane these days because you don't have a lot of interruptions. But Newt, I hope I see you in person soon, and thank you so much for joining us on the Laura Ingraham podcast. Really appreciate it. All right, we have a lot more to get to. Raymond Arroyo is with us. Remember, if you want to be part of this podcast, email us at ingram.podcast@gmail.com. It's very easy. Be part of the conversation. It's fun. ingram.podcast@gmail.com. Raymond, any update on the grief patrol in New Orleans?
The Houdat Nation is still in mourning over that botched double call, passer interference, head-on-head collision.
Oh, no, that
should never have happened.
That was a complete
should
outrage.
never have happened. But I have to admit,
it's getting
the lawsuits,
the
city council resolution, the governor's statement.
Are they? I saw one of the lawsuits. Loss of joy or consortium, because you'd have more action at home if you were winning. Everyone's like going to their corners now.
Right, everybody's angry and kicking the cat.
Right. Exactly.
So you see that maybe it is ground for a lawsuit. To take joy from New Orleans takes a lot. So I think they overplay their hand.
Will Mardi Gras be the same this year?
Mardi Gras is coming up. The problem is here. My theory is if Mardi Gras had fallen as it normally does, which is middle to late February. This would be brushed aside. The problem is Mardi Gras doesn't come till the top of March. So there's such a big gap, even though we're in the carnival season.
Last year, Mardi Gras was the first week of February, correct?
Oh, yeah. It was early.
I don't even understand. Well, I know it
moves depending on Easter. Remember, it's 40 days from Easter.
Right.
So sometimes Easter moves and it moves with it. Yeah. Mardi Gras is
I don't understand why Easter moves either. I should know this, but why does Easter move?
The Tuesday that begins Lent is
why does Easter move? Do we know that? I don't. Why does Easter move to different?
I don't know. Don't ask me.
But it's late.
But it moves. Sometimes there's a late Mardi Gras. Sometimes it's an early Mardi Gras.
No.
And
this is way too late.
That has driven a lot of our disenchantment and upsetment in town.
Well, Ben Wattsman was on the Ingraham angle, and he was fantastic. What a great man. And also tweeting out about the outrage of the late-term abortion law in New York. And the standing ovation they got. So now they can rip babies apart in the womb at 6 months in the womb. And they gave them a standing ovation. They gave the State House, I believe. It was in Albany.
Yep.
Sickening. And he tweeted out about that. Good for him. I love him. It's awesome. Let's go to Roman. Speaking of New York. Roman, go ahead. Nice to have you on.
How you doing, Laura?
I'm fantastic.
I just want to say what an honor it is, though, to be on the Laura Ingraham podcast.
No.
So, first, I wanted to, if you don't mind, I wanted to comment on what you were saying a couple minutes ago when you were talking about the left. And I mean, you're really right when you say about, you don't know where we would be if it wasn't for things like Fox News, because I couldn't even imagine. I mean, I hear this all the time from people on the left and people that consider themselves, I guess, moderates. They're like, well, you can't go after people. You don't want to go out. You just want to sit back and let people say what they want. But it's like, we live in a different time now where we really can't do that anymore. Cause it's like, if we did that, I don't, like you said, I really don't know where our country would be if people like you and Tucker and Sean and, the rest of us that try to spread truth every once in a while. Like it just, I don't know where the United States will end up if we just let the left take over everything.
Go ahead, Ron. You want to talk about the Catholic students? Oh,
yeah, the student that thing, Laura. To be honest, like that was just a disgrace. I can't, and every time that you think the left can't get more, they can't get more delusional, they can't do more outrageous things. You get surprised every time. But to be honest, it's the same people that rushed with that BuzzFeed story, which was one of the most ridiculous things I've ever
Trump
seen.
told Cohen to lie and before Congress. And that got them all excited over there on MSNBC on Thursday night. They were killing commercial breaks. They were blowing through the breaks and like, wow, Trump. Yeah, I've known Trump for 20 years. That was the most ridiculous thing. When I saw it, I was like, this is ridiculous. Michael Cohen's trying to avoid jail time. Turns out, look, Michael Cohen probably didn't even say it.
No, I don't think so. The whole thing was just outrageous. And so the same people that, jumped at that story, because I think Tucker said this the other night on his show, nothing's more satisfying than having your own biases confirmed. And,
well, that's what people. Yeah, I think you're right. And we're running out of time here, but I appreciate that call. Even Joy Behar on, The View had to admit that when she was pressed by Whoopi Goldberg. She had to admit it. We played the soundbite on Fox last night. And I'm glad we did, because she admitted this is what we want to. It's wishful thinking.
Right.
Wishful thinking, wish fulfillment. Yeah. We wish people would actually take a moment and take a breath and let all the facts come out before you make a decision. But again, it's hands up, don't shoot. That never happened in Ferguson. Remember, it was this cop killed this kid in cold blood. Turns out he did a strong arm burglary or robbery of a convenience store. He is probably smoking pot. Speaking of pot, we're going to have a great conversation about what marijuana is really doing to our kids' brains. But this is all an attempt to demonize conservatism beyond Trump. Whatever happened, they want to make the pro-life cause the anti-woman cause. They've done that for a long time. That's what that Ilhan Omar tweeted out. They were there standing against a woman's right to choose. Women's rights. No, they were standing for women's rights in the womb. But see, that's what they so it's toxic. So Trump's racist, then the pro-life cause is anti-woman, and then if you believe that the Defense Department should be able to determine what the best rules are for deploying soldiers, then you're anti-transgender, you're anti-gay, whatever. So it's never about the issue. It's about how they can brand you in your views. By the way, if you're enjoying this podcast, and I'm certainly enjoying it, and all the guests in the long-form conversations that we can't have on TV because segments, as Raymond always says, they're so short.
Yeah.
They're so short.
No, they're 2:30, 3 minutes
4 or
tops.
5 minutes longest. I mean, but they're short segments. But if you enjoy this, then you have to support our great sponsors who make it possible. So you can have this free. Stamps.com. Well, Stamps.com, they bring all the services of the post office right to your computer. So you can print out your own postage. It's faster, more convenient. You save money. There are deals at Stamps.com that you can't get at the post office. So that's how you save money. And just the hassle of going to the post office. The mail carrier picks up your package, your letters, and they're delivered. But you actually handle it all at home. You don't have to deal with waiting. The worst is waiting in line at the post office. Do you notice it seems like some of the Postal Service employees enjoy making you wait in line? It's a slow walk to get the box and really slow to come back to the cashier area. No, slow. All you need to do is go to Stamps.com. They have a special offer that includes a 4-week trial plus postage, and you get a digital scale. It makes the whole thing really easy. Just start the new year off right. Save time, save money, and have convenience back in your life with Stamps.com. Stamps.com, you click that microphone at the top of the homepage. You'll see it, and type in Ingram. That's Stamps.com. Enter Ingram. All right, back on the Laura Ingraham podcast. So much news. We have to get to it all. And, of course, beyond news, the culture. Where is this current conversation taking us? Where are we going? I mean, what is the whole point of being here as citizens of the United States? Do we want this country to prosper and continue to be able to live in freedom, express our views, practice our faith without threats? Or someone barging into a mass or any celebration of our faith with threatening protests or banging things or instilling fear in a religious population? I mean, my gosh, we talk about what happens to Christians and Catholics in the Middle East. You could see one of these situations getting out of control if they keep barging into these religious services, as we saw with this Nathan Phillips, the radical, rabid, left-wing activist, Native American, who led 20 people into a Catholic mass in Washington, D.C. and disrupted the mass. It's just completely outrageous. So we're going to talk about all of that and disturbing news out of New York with a late-term abortion bill that was celebrated with pink. The One World Trade Center was lit up pink to celebrate death. Wow. I hope feminists are happy. Joining us now, Bill Donohue, President and CEO of the Catholic League for Religious and Civil Rights. He's just one of my favorite people, period, and just great on Fox, and we're so delighted He's joining us here on the podcast. Bill, I'm telling you, from the New York partial birth abortion, late-term abortion, whatever you want to call it, to what's happening with these Covington High kids, it's easy to get disheartened, but I just get more committed, and I know you do, to defending our faith, our freedom, and our way of life.
That's right. And, let me tell you something. You have summarized so well, and particularly last night on your television show, the hatred, the deep animus that has affected many issues way beyond Covington, that you've done a great public service. Let me just address the Cuomo bill, which is what it was, on abortion, very quickly. The listeners will probably think that Donohue's gone off the deep end, that this is not true. I can prove that what I'm saying now is true. Under the Cuomo bill, which passed, which he rushed through so they couldn't have any hearings on it, licensed healthcare practitioners under New York public law can now perform an abortion. You know who they include? Dentists and chiropractors. That's right.
What?
That's what. Now, let me tell you something. The rich white woman.
How can that be?
Well, because under public law in New York State, a license, and we have the evidence. I haven't even gotten a chance to get to it because the Covington thing has just been overwhelming. But chiropractors, not social workers, dentists, physical therapists, and others are considered licensed healthcare professionals. He doesn't want doctors to perform abortions. He wants others to do it. But the doctors will always perform the abortions with the wealthy white woman. So guess who's going to be serviced by the chiropractor? In other words, anybody who's a licensed healthcare practitioner will now be able to do so. I think I know whose neighborhoods they're going to visit. Now, with regard to the Covington thing, you mentioned that the Indians crashed the Basilica last Saturday night at 5:15, and they were stopped only by security. That is absolutely true. We did a search this morning at the Catholic League. Guess who didn't report on it? The New York Times, the L.A. Times, the Washington Post, Associated Press, ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, and CNN. Only Fox News covered it. Now, if Catholic kids had interrupted a prayer service by Indians, and I certainly wouldn't defend that would be on the front page news. They are looking desperately to try and anything to find some guilt on the Catholic kids. And we've looked at this thing, and I'm going to be putting out a statement either today or tomorrow, verbatim of what these black thugs said about the Catholic kids. It was not reported by the media because we've listened to the hours of the tape, and we have it all. And we also know that it was the black guys who called the Indian savages. Now, why didn't Phillips confront them? Why did he, in fact, try to storm the cathedral, the Basilica, last Saturday night? This whole thing is a setup, and these kids are the only innocent ones of the three parties to this confrontation.
All right, I want to focus initially, and then I want to get back to that because these are connected. This is all connected. This conversation is all aligning into a very, very dark place that the Democrats have come to. They've arrived at a very, very dark place, as they claim Trump is a puppet of Putin and all the things. But they're in a very dark place. This is Bill de Blasio, mayor of New York, on this legislation that was passed last night. And just for those of you who don't know what it is, the law for the first time allows abortions after the 24-week mark, meaning 6 months up until birth, abortions can take place. Okay? It's basically abortion on demand at any time during the 9-month pregnancy of a woman. This is how de Blasio framed it.
I support this act. It's crucial that we protect a woman's right to choose, particularly at this moment in history where women's rights are under attack.
And adding on to that, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, the New York State Majority Leader. Remember, it's now majority Democrats, state, House, and Senate. So they got Democrat leadership, 2 Democrat senators, of course, New York City, and a very big Catholic community in New York State. But this is what Andrea said.
We have a president who's made it very, very clear that he wants to overturn Roe v. Wade. Today, here in New York, We are saying no. We're saying that here in New York, women's health matters. We're saying here in New York, women's lives matter. We're saying here in New York, women's decisions matter.
So if you're against ripping babies apart in the womb, torturing them in the womb till death, torturing until death, if you're against that, then you're against women. That's it, Bill.
The people who are against women are the ones who are sponsoring this bill and who like it and applaud it like de Blasio, who say that non-physicians can now perform abortions. Look, I just put up a statement last week by a Dr. Zaban. I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly. I've never met the man. He's contacted me by email. He's an emergency room physician in Charlotte, North Carolina, and he has described for me very meticulously, I have it up on the website, what he sees with women who have been thrown out of Planned Parenthood clinics. Say, you deal with them because this woman's bleeding. She's got all kinds of problems. Now, he's able to help save these women from these abortions, which didn't go too well for them, never mind the baby. Who's going to be there to protect these women? And I know what neighborhoods are going to be in. The Margaret Sanger neighborhoods, basically the African-American and the Hispanic neighborhoods, because the rich, white, liberal woman will always have the best of possible care. This is not helping women. This is putting their lives in danger. We would have a fit if we found out that nurses were going to do dentistry from now on. You're talking about surgery done by people who are not doctors. If you really wanted to hurt women, you would support this bill.
You know, Bill, this makes me think of that Texas and Louisiana law that demanded that any abortion provider be afforded and have admitting privileges at hospitals. And you'll remember, the courts threw that out, I think. They fought against that, though it was passed in Louisiana and Texas. Here's why. This is exactly why. They didn't want them to have admitting privileges because they're not real physicians. They're not really qualified. They're not obstetrics. They're not OBGYNs. They're not trained in this area.
I think that's right, Raymond, but I think there's one other thing, too, that we have to remember. This is going on right now in Ireland, and it has happened here before, and it's going to happen more in New York. Increasingly, doctors who are well-trained physicians do not want to perform abortions. So if you're running out of abortionists to do that job, then you have to go to somebody else. That's the problem that they're confronting. Most doctors don't want to deal with this anymore because it's sickening. And once you get beyond 24 weeks, look out. No wonder they have to have the chiropractors on duty.
No, I mean, without, sending people to vomit because it's so disgusting, what is done to the child in the womb is, Hitlerian.
It's insidious.
Every pejorative description, barbarity, callousness, torture, inflicting pain. Do they ever did all these celebrants of this late-term abortion procedure, Bill, do they ever for a moment think about the girls in the womb who are being tortured, who feel pain? I mean, what's their argument to that?
The New York Times ran about an 8-part editorial series on abortion, which I commented on, and they don't even genuflect the other way. They don't even give the slightest indication that there might be a competing right. And they have to dance around the language. It's kind of a linguistic minefield. Don't mention the word baby. No one's ever had a fetus shower, have they? No. These people know exactly what they're doing, but they are mad. They're obsessed with this, and nobody is more obsessed in the United States with abortion than Andrew Cuomo, who came out here about a week ago and said it pains him as a Catholic because he was an altar boy. That's what he described himself.
Oh, my God.
Because it pains him that he disagrees with the church on marriage, he disagrees with the church on abortion, he disagrees with the church on the Child Victims Act. I'm not sure what he agrees with them on. It certainly couldn't be cohabitation.
But, Dolan came out and, he said they made some brief comments, but it's not really. Let's just play it.
It's so important for us to insist that the protection of the baby in the womb is a civil rights issue. It's not a Catholic issue. It's not a religious issue. It is a civil rights issue.
Well, he's right. But has he really led the charge, Bill, against this? I mean, he's the Archbishop of New York. Has he really been speaking with authority and mobilizing Catholic voters?
I think he has done a pretty good job. I don't put the blame on him. Cuomo has double-crossed him over and over again. If there's any criticism I would have is to say, what's the sense of having any kind of dialogue with a man who thinks that dialogue is a one-way street? Cuomo, and now he has, as you correctly pointed out, now he has a Democrat-controlled up in Albany, all the lawmakers. So this is going to be an all-out war on Catholics. And it's interesting. I also blame Catholics themselves. New York City is mostly Catholic and Jewish, okay? And the state itself is still fairly big on, Catholics are disproportionately represented, let's put it that way, in New York State. They don't seem to get activated on this stuff as much as they should. I think part of it is just a matter of giving up. I mean, the Democratic Party has become the party of death. And it's incredible to listen to people talk who say, oh, well, both parties have their strengths and weaknesses, but what exactly is the strength in saying that you can have non-doctors perform abortions in certainly in some neighborhoods? That's what's going to happen in New York State. They're not the friend of woman. If I hated women, I wanted to see them suffer, I would be in favor of this bill.
Well, I think again, this is a moment where we all need to take stock of where we are, what amount of courage are we willing to invest in this current battle? This is a cultural battle. It's a spiritual battle. Of course, it's a political battle. But you can't be intimidated. You have to hold up the candle in the darkness here because, boy, there's a lot of blood on the hands of a lot of politicians here. You just really do want to cry, but you can't. You have to fight for those who cannot speak and who've lost their lives. You have to. And I thank God every day that Trump is president, because if he weren't president, Hillary Clinton would have 2 or 3 seats on the Supreme Court. And Bill, when all these conservatives out there are complaining about Trump's tweets, or, I say, something, I don't have any use for you. Okay, I have no use for you grousing about Trump's tweets, okay? Literally, we could be in a situation where lives, many, many, millions of lives ultimately could be saved. Could be.
I want to pivot for a moment and ask Bill about the Catholic dimension, the Catholic backdrop to this controversy surrounding these Covington High School kids. Are you at all surprised, Bill, that the Covington diocese, after coming out and attacking these kids and saying their actions were reprehensible and condemning them, the school did the same thing, now the diocese, and Bishop Foy's there, has issued an independent investigation of the kids. Now, we can't independently investigate outrageous. Cardinal McCarrick, but we can independently investigate lay children at a Catholic school?
Independent investigation?
Yeah. Where was the independent investigation last Friday? They came out and they condemned, and that's the word they used. They condemned the students without asking for their side of the things or of the chaperones. So now they're caught. And, if you look at their statement, obviously in their case it's not anti-Catholicism that's driving it. It's not the anti-Trump thing, which is driving a lot of it. These crazy people like Bill Kristol and others, they see a red hat and they go crazy. No, in this case here, it's all about Native Americans. So now we're going to show. See what's happened? The Catholic Church has been damaged by the homosexual scandal to such an extent that they think they're going to win back the applause of the media by bending their way. They are prepared, some of them, to sell out their own kids on the altar of sensitivity to minorities. It is disgusting. And it's very uncharacteristic of me to go after a particular diocese. But I did so last night with Laura, and I'm doing it again today, and I'm doing it in writing, because I can't take it anymore. This has just gone too far. These cowards that are in the Catholic Church, who are more sensitive to all these different cultures in the world. They have bought into the multicultural moonshine. That's what it's all about. Tear down Western civilization and elevate the others. And by the way, where did the idea of freedom and individual rights and equality before the law come from? It didn't come from any place else other than Western civilization. So good luck once you tear that down.
No, and Bill, I think the same analysis, which is brilliant, by the way, applies to the border issue. Right, the Catholic Church is all no walls, no borders, because it's a trade-off. Think you're going to get more Latinos in the church, more bodies in the pews. Hey, newsflash, the money that you're getting in the resettlement from the HHS to resettle refugees, it ain't going to be worth it. By the way, a lot of the Latinos are becoming charismatics too, right? They're more going into the Seventh-day Adventists.
Very
and the
big numbers.
And they're a lot of them are leaving the church for a variety of reasons.
Well, let me just pick up on that thing about I just said before, which dovetails with what you just said. To the extent, the Catholic bishops are being played, and Catholic priests are being played. The people who are against us want to neuter the Catholic voice because of the homosexual scandal. So they are being played. So they feel like, well, we can't talk about abortion. We can't talk about marriage. We can't talk about a lot of these socio-cultural life issues. So what we'll do is talk about what's left. What's left is exactly immigration, poverty, climate control, and things of that nature. And thinking, well, maybe we'll curry favor with the mainstream media and they'll give us another look. They're not going to give you another look. They hate you. And it's plain stupidity not to understand who your enemy is. And we got a serious problem with the church. We've got people like Father Dan Horan out there slamming the kids, promoting the gay agenda, Father Martin doing the same thing, Father Beck.
Can't stand them.
Where were they complaining about the black Israelites when they called the homosexual kids faggots? Where were they?
No. They're so invested in the radical agenda, the social agenda of America. They're so invested in it that they are willing to throw their own members of the church under the bus. And look, kids are going to make mistakes. I'm not talking about these kids, but look, kids are going to do dumb things. I did dumb things when I was a kid, a lot of dumb things. But it's really disappointing when leaders in the church, who are the only thing, I mean, they're it. I mean, if they don't stand up and for what's true and what's right, then gosh, no wonder people are, not dropping money into the collection plates. And my priests are telling me it's way down. The collections are way down.
Well, it's going to continue that way because we don't have enough John O'Connors out there speaking. We lost a great guy and a great friend of Ray's, and I got to know him through Ray, Bishop Morlino. His voice is gone. Archbishop Chaput in Philadelphia is undergoing some health issues and the like, and others have been just confronted by lawmakers who are totally on the other side. So everything is an uphill battle. I mean, yeah, you're right. What you said before. These people like Bill Kristol and others, they all wanted their job back, didn't they? They all worked for Bush at one point, or one of the two Bushes, and they all wanted their job back. And they tried to destroy Trump, and he beat them. And they'll go to their grave angry. But it's at a point of delirium. I've never seen such pathological hatred gone off the cliff, that their thinking has been totally disfigured by ideological animus. And they're not even rational human beings anymore. And there's not just a few of them. There's a whole host of them.
Well, I couldn't agree more. Bill, we'll stay on this, of course. Thank you so much for your analysis on this and so much else. You were great on TV. Come back soon.
Thank you
Bill,
for dealing with the cultural issues because, unfortunately, a lot of people, including on our side, don't want to touch it.
Oh, they're all afraid. Look, I'm going to get hammered. I'm going to get hammered. That's something I don't care anymore. I really don't. You want to throw me off TV? Throw me off TV. You want me? Just guess what? I'll speak in another way. I'll do the podcast. I mean, I'm kind of beyond. It's just like we're here for a really short period of time. Make it matter. Make what we're doing. What's the point of this? Otherwise, money is not the point. It's nice to have money, but that's not the point. The point is standing up for what is true and right, so our kids have a country and a culture they can be proud of and flourish in. Not be dragged down by and demonized by. Bill, you're fantastic. Thank you so much. You're listening to
you and Raymond.
All right. Thank you. We're going to keep going on this because there's just so much more that we have to hit. Grant Hillman, by the way, one of the Covington Catholic kids, was on Fox and Friends this morning giving us more color about what it's been like since last Friday.
The threats, they've been horrible. I've never heard such cruel things wished upon another human being. It ranges from getting locked inside a building and burned alive to sexually assaulted by the clergy members. It's just awful.
And there's a lot more. I mean, he spoke out. We had the Nick Sandmann speak out with Savannah Guthrie, and I had a chance to speak with him yesterday on the phone. I've got to say he sounded pretty together, considering. I mean, I don't know how I would have handled this at age 15. He's pretty poised. That's unreal. It's been a brutal, vicious time for him.
The center of the firestorm, what critics characterize as a smirk on Sandman's face, some saying it was an attempt to stare down Phillips. What do you think that looks like?
I see it as a smile saying that this is the best you're going to get out of me. You won't get any further reaction of aggression, and I'm willing to stand here as long as you want to hit this drum in my face.
I have a question for Savannah Guthrie. Does she take the same umbrage when we have members of Antifa who are not just staring at someone, who are ripping them out of cars or smashing windows or terrorizing people just trying to walk down the street wearing a cap? I mean, are they bringing in members of Antifa to say, what do you think about that behavior? What do you think about what you did to that kid? What do you think about how you destroyed private property? What do you think that means to... No, they don't do that to the left. Antifa is just one example. How about some of the border activists? What they scream at the Border Patrol? Do they ever think that doesn't feel good on the other side? If you're a government employee and you're trying to do your job and you're being called racist like an inch from your face? Or DC police officers? Last year when Antifa was, deciding to show up when there were like 5 people from that Proud Boys group or whatever, and Antifa shows up and the protesters were screaming the most hideous things. Again, inches away from the face of black police officers, Latino police officers, white police officers, women, men. It didn't matter. I don't remember the media analyzing the facial expressions, but a 15-year-old kid has a MAGA hat on. You got to dissect it and look at the tape and review the tape and listen to the chants and try to tag the chants with a kid. Yeah, ever do that to the others? It's so transparent. Angela Rye, she was on Chris Cuomo's show last night. Let's listen.
When I see the Make America Great Again hat, I am triggered. I'm so triggered. This Make America Great Again hat is just as maddening and frustrating and triggering for me to look at as a KKK hood.
So what do we do now? She's triggered, so destroy all hats. She's triggered. I'm triggered when I, see the swear words used, the F Trump T-shirts where they'll maybe lose a vowel or something. But I'm triggered. There's a lot. I guess triggered. I'm triggered just watching MSNBC or CNN. But does that mean that they have to go off the air? It's so ridiculous. Triggered. Oh, Don Lemon, who hasn't cracked a smile in weeks. He has just one facial expression. It's just flat. What's happened? He used to smile and have a good time. He doesn't seem like he's having fun anymore. That's a shame. He has a nice smile. Well, the MAGA hat seems to trigger him, too.
The MAGA hat carries a certain connotation that provokes a conditioned reaction from many people, especially from marginalized people. When you wear that MAGA hat, you are saying, build that wall. That's what that MAGA hat says.
So what?
At a minimum. At a minimum. If you are wearing that MAGA hat, it says everything that this president has said and stands for, right? All of it. So own it and don't pretend that it's some just innocent thing, like, it's in a vacuum.
So when you wore Clinton Gore T-shirts, does it mean you were in favor of having oral sex with an intern? When you wore a Barack Obama gear or put a bumper sticker on your car, does it mean that you believe that we should let our ambassador and those contractors die in Benghazi, or that you should trail reporters, or that your attorney general should be held in contempt of Congress? Do you want me to go down the list of things Obama did? So anytime someone wore an Obama shirt, we should have gone up to them, because we're triggered by a lot of the abuses of the Obama administration. We should be able to go up to those people and say, your T-shirt and your hat and your O sticker, that affects me deeply. It triggers my view about corrupt governments, emails deleted from hard drives, private servers, phony, let's move agendas where you're giving our kids cardboard meat at school. Can you imagine? God, I could do this all day. I got a lot to get to still on the podcast. And by the way, if you want to be part of the podcast, it's really easy. Just email us at ingram.podcast@gmail.com. Ingram.podcast@gmail.com. If you follow me on Twitter at Ingram Angle and on Facebook, most of you already do, but you'll be able to not only be reminded of when the podcasts drop, which is frequently, but you'll be able to see what we're talking about and then be part of the conversation. Okay, so just always follow me on Twitter and Facebook. Lots of fun stuff there as well. Well, if you're enjoying this podcast and you're enjoying it free, of course, in your home right now, think about it. How many old photo albums? Drawers. I have drawers filled with photos. It's infuriating. And then Nico's always finding one. He's like, oh, look at this. We were in Martha's Vineyard. Or we were like, I'm always seeing these photos he's pulling out of these drawers. Well, so we gathered up, I think most of them, if not all of them, maybe most of them. And we gather those up. We have a bunch of VHS tapes, other things, and we're sending them off to Legacy Box. It's very easy. Legacy Box does all the digitizing of your old format. So you have videotapes, you have old photos, audio tapes. Guess what? All digitized for you. You get it back in a thumb drive or a digital download or even a DVD if that's what you want. It's that easy. It's like magic. And with Legacy Box, you can also digitize your old family memories in a way that it kind of brings the memories alive again. Because otherwise they're just sitting on a shelf or sitting in a drawer, box, and you never see them. It's fun, especially when you have kids or grandkids. So just go to legacybox.com, one of our great sponsors, and get started. In a limited time, they're offering my listeners an exclusive discount. Just go to legacybox.com/Ingram, and you'll get 40% off your first order. That's legacybox.com/Ingram, and save 40% today. Get started preserving your past. All right, we're back on the Laura Ingraham podcast. We're exposing the lies from the radical left, their attempt to co-opt the culture. Well, you might think the culture's lost, but no, it's not necessarily lost. It's only lost when you say it's lost and you give up. Their attempt to subvert the American family, the American tradition, our rule of law, our capitalist system, the free market, religious liberty. Never thought I'd be saying that, but you bet. Why? Because traditional Christian denominations, especially the Catholic Church, stands against their agenda. But when money's involved, it's very interesting how the concern about the kids, we're worried about the kids, their well-being, and women and in teens. We want them to be healthy and their authentic self, and we want them. It's funny how all that goes out the window when hundreds of billions of dollars is on the line in big weed, promoting pot, promoting the legalization of marijuana, promoting edibles, promoting even medical marijuana when there are no peer-reviewed studies. To my mind, to my understanding, there are still no peer-reviewed studies definitively showing that marijuana has medicinal value. It's a big lie, a big way to crack that door open before it's flung open for all-out legalization. Okay, so that's what's going on. What is it? Is this all? This is just like alcohol. You hear all the arguments like prohibition that didn't work. Well, what is this pot? What is this substance? What does it do to especially young and developing brains? We're learning a lot more about that. And joining us now is a brave guy, Alex Berenson. His book, Tell Your Children the Truth About Marijuana, Mental Illness, and Violence. He is rattling all the right cages with this. I love it. He joins us now. Alex, congrats on the book. It's fantastic.
Laura, thank you so much for having me on. And, I'm not the brave one. The brave one are the people who get stuck with psychosis, which is a terrible illness, schizophrenia, after smoking. And the brave people are their families. And I've heard from so many mothers, especially mothers, whose sons, and it's especially sons, have developed schizophrenia and really had their lives ruined after using. And I've realized in the last couple of weeks that it's not Tell Your Children that's going to change this debate. It's these mothers because the book tells the truth, and I'm passionate about the facts in the book. But my passion cannot compare to the passion of these parents who've seen their children's lives wrecked and whose own lives have been wrecked. Psychosis, dealing with a child who's psychotic permanently. It wrecks marriages, it wrecks families. It's devastating. Everything becomes about the disease, and it's really terrifying. No. And that's what's going to change the debate. Sure.
So I read the book, and I haven't seen the film, A Beautiful Boy, but it chronicles a family that has been just ripped apart by drug addiction, and that started in a little boy who was, I guess, 12 or 13, if my memory serves me correct. And it started with, some drinking, but then it really, really started with marijuana. And all these people saying that marijuana is not a gateway drug. I mean, I just don't know many people who go right to heroin. They usually do start with marijuana. As far as everything that I read, everyone starts with marijuana, but it's somehow never a gateway drug.
No, there's zero question it's a gateway drug. The studies are incredibly clear on this. The only question is why it's a gateway drug. Is it a gateway drug because you start using and you start hanging out with people who are doing harder drugs, in which case, that's actually an argument for legalization, believe it or not, because in that case you say, okay, we'll split it out. Or is it a gateway because pharmacologically it primes your brain for more addictive and pleasurable experiences? But what I do know is that encouraging people to use an addictive drug, especially if they're at high risk for addiction, is really stupid. And until the last 5 to 10 years, nobody ever said that marijuana was a cure for the United States opioid epidemic. And suddenly, because of a couple of really weak papers, the cannabis industry is promoting this point of view, and no one has noticed that the United States and Canada, which are the two countries that have the most cannabis use, also have by far the worst opioid epidemic. So it's like, if this stuff works to get people off opioids, why is it that's true?
That's, oh my gosh, it's really... Well, I have to say, when you listen to someone, I'll play this Chuck Schumer for you. This was last year, and he was talking about the legalization of marijuana in New York. Let's listen.
Where are you on recreational marijuana use?
My personal view is legalization is just fine.
So legalization is fine. I mean, that's a change for you.
Yeah.
Legalization is fine.
Listen, as I said, I looked at what's happened in the states that have done it. Seems to have worked out pretty well. All the parade of horribles that people talked about didn't occur. Crime did not spike in any place. There's no evidence that young people are using drugs of any type more. The pathway issue hasn't proven to be true. So it all makes sense.
Your reaction to that? I hadn't actually heard that before.
That's just factually incorrect. Cory Booker said something similar, and especially when you say violent crime, which Cory specifically said. He said violent crime was down in the states that had legalized. That's just untrue. Violent crime, by which I mean murders and aggravated assaults, the most serious violent crime, is up substantially more in the first 4 states to legalize since 2013 than in the United States as a whole. The data is undeniable. So violent crime is up. Suicides, in which people had THC in their blood have increased fourfold in Colorado between 2006 and 2016. Driving deaths where people have been found to have THC in their blood are up. The idea that nothing bad has happened is just contradicted by the facts.
You know how Erin Brockovich he became a big cult hero on the left because she was exposing the toxic chemical company and what it had done to poison people and cause cancer and so forth. They made the movie, and it was Brockovich. I mean, it's Susan Sarandon. Was it
Sure.
Susan Sarandon, or was it? I think it was. Or was
it was Julia Roberts.
Julia Roberts.
Julia Roberts.
That's right. So she became a cult figure. Like I'm not trying to suck up to you here, but like you're up against it here. You're out there, and there are a few others like you who are standing against a multi-billion-dollar industry that has co-opted people like Schumer and people like John Boehner, who used to be against legalization until he got on the board of one of the big weed companies. And you're standing against them and you're saying, no. This actually kills people.
Yeah.
And so you've received threats, I understand.
Well, harassing phone calls, threats on Twitter, I don't want to overstate it at this point. But let's just say that, I'm prepared for it to get worse. I don't care. The facts are what they are. And I've heard from too many people whose lives and whose family members' lives have been wrecked by this. And, I don't want to be an advocate. I'm a registered independent, okay? I write spy novels. I've worked at the New York Times for 10 years as an investigative reporter, but I had a very good, profitable career writing spy novels in the last several years. I wrote this book because I felt I had to, because once I looked at the science, I couldn't believe how long the debate has been. And by the way, my wife is a forensic psychiatrist, and those are the people who are basically responsible for cleaning up the wreckage here. So she sees the cases. She sees the terrible psychotic violence that this drug produces. And the psychiatrists know. They don't want to get involved. They don't want to discuss this because it's unpleasant, because they know that the advocacy community is going to scream at them. But the people who are running psych wards, the people who are evaluating these criminally mentally ill people, they all know the truth.
Well, Alex, I've read your stuff for many years, mostly the stuff in the New York Times. You're a really terrific writer. And most importantly, you're actually reporting. You're actually doing real reporting on an issue that has become, again, just commonly understood. And this is not a political issue. I take politics. It has nothing to do with politics. This is about science and about the experience of the THC use in individuals, especially hard-hit our young people, and what it actually does to the population at large. That's what it's about. So it's not about politics. Somehow it became a political issue. It shouldn't be.
Well, because the advocacy community doesn't want to talk about the science. They'd rather talk about, arrest rates. They'd rather talk about, personal use. They'd rather talk about anything but the science here, because the smarter people in the advocacy community know what the science says, and they know that this is a dangerous issue for them, so they don't want to talk about it. But the problem is not talking about it doesn't make it go away, and the impacts are real, and they're getting worse.
This is Sanjay Gupta, who's a very well-known physician, and he appears on CNN with Brian Stelter on the pot and opioids connection.
Cannabis can help treat pain. That is a consensus by the National Academy of Science. That is not an opinion. It can treat pain. It can treat the withdrawal when people are trying to come off of opioids. That is not an opinion, again. That is a fact. It can help heal an addict's brain so they don't continue to relapse. That's scientific data that's going on right now at Mount Sinai Hospital. The research is happening there. These are facts.
Are those facts?
Look, cannabis is an intoxicant, okay? Like alcohol, it's going to make you forget that you're in pain in the short term. But and like benzos, it can soothe anxiety in the short term. By benzos, I mean Ativan, Valium, those prescription drugs that you get. That does not mean it's a good long-term pain reliever. There is a really good study from Australia that came out last year that shows that people over a 4-year period who used cannabis and opioids reported higher levels of pain at the end of the period, and they reported more opioid use. using an intoxicant to treat your pain doesn't work in the long run. There may be some people it benefits, okay, but on a population level basis, which is how we need to look at this stuff, if we're talking about public health, it doesn't work. It's just misguided.
What do you say when the usual comment is, well, you know, you can't, what are you going to, this hasn't worked, so you're going to have to do prohibition, and alcohol is much worse for young people in the population, much worse than pot.
So alcohol is not much worse than pot. Alcohol is more physically toxic than pot. Pot appears to be, and almost certainly is more neurotoxic than alcohol. People don't get long-term psychotic disorders from alcohol unless they're really late-stage alcoholics. Alcohol doesn't seem to impact the developing brain as severely as pot does. All these parents, you know, in places like Brooklyn who think, oh, it's okay if my 16-year-old smokes pot, it's much better than drinking, they are just completely wrong. They should be discouraging their kids from doing both. But the idea that cannabis is somehow better than alcohol is nuts. The reason the book is called Tell Your Children is in part because I knew the blowback I was going to get, because that was actually the original title of the movie Reefer Madness. But it's in part called Tell Your Children because I want parents to have the information they need to talk to their children about this. And I want even young adults who are using, who may have noticed problems in their own use, they can't cut back, they're having more paranoid thoughts. I want them to understand the context of this and that they are really at risk for dangerous mental illness.
All right, on the line we have Sam in Maryland, who's the parent of a 16-year-old. Sam.
Hey, Laura, how are you?
I'm great, thanks.
Hey, by the way, thank you for all you do.
I appreciate that.
You're
Thank
a great voice for the unspoken, and we really, really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
You know, my experience, I'm about your age, late 50s. I grew up middle school, high school in the Valley in California back in the mid-'70s. So, you know, the use of marijuana was very prevalent amongst my peers. And I saw it destroy a lot of young, smart, talented people who used it as a gateway to get into harder things. And these were bright young kids whose lives were just destroyed. A couple of them ended up dead. I know one or two of them in jail, and just too many of them who just got derailed from productive lives. And I'm just a firm believer that it is a gateway. Unless you're really taught to make good decisions and understand, you know, don't let it affect your life.
Well, I think that's well said. I mean, Nick Sheff, who's the subject of that New York Times, was a New York Times writer, and his story about his son. Nick was his son, who's an incredibly smart young man. What's scary is you get into that cycle. We're talking to Alex Berenson from the New York Times, his new book, which is a stunner, Tell Your Children, Truth About Marijuana, Mental Illness, and Violence. He's a New York Times bestselling author, #1 New York Times bestselling author. And it's a must-read. But it was really scary is that once you get into the drug culture, it gets worse. And then the highs don't deliver, especially when the young brain, because the young brain's always looking for the next thing. You get to the next thing, and then suddenly you find yourself shooting up. And then you're shooting up, and you're in rehab 4, 5, 6, 7 times. And once you're into some of these drugs, the ability to recover, you're in recovery, but to really kick the habit it's like 10%. Alex, you can close it out on that thought.
Sure. I mean, I think cannabis definitely can lead to harder drug use, but all by itself, it's a danger.
All by itself, it's bad.
All by itself, it's bad. And I'll tell you that the only thing, and I haven't talked to these family members, these mothers, the only thing that is worse than being the mother of a heroin addict and waiting for the call that your son has overdosed is to be the mother of somebody with schizophrenia who's living on the street, who's making violent threats, and waiting for the call that he's either killed himself or possibly killed someone else. And some of these family members tell me that is actually the call they are waiting for now. Because they know, after somebody's been hospitalized 17 times, he's not getting better. It's just a question of how much damage he does over the rest of his life. And that is a terrible, terrible thing, and we need to talk about it.
Alex Berenson, a must-read book that the marijuana industry does not want you to read. Tell your children the truth about marijuana, mental illness, and violence. It's our featured selection today, and you have to get this book. We're going to have him on television. I'm going to be covering this a lot in the coming year because there's going to be increasing pressure, financial pressure and otherwise, on more states, to legalize marijuana. It's a multi-billion-dollar lobbying push across the country, and there's just an enormous amount of money on the line. Whenever's money's involved, you know that oftentimes the best interests of the people, especially our young people, are not going to be put at the forefront. Alex, congrats on the book. We'll see you on TV. Thanks again to our sponsors who are supporting this show, mancrates.com. You get 14% off when you spend $100 or more at mancrates.com/Ingram. Stamps.com, go to stamps.com, type in Ingram for a special offer. And LegacyBox, legacybox.com/Ingram, save 40% today. Make sure you tell everyone you know about the Laura Ingram podcast, podcast1.com, or the Podcast One app, or, of course, just on iTunes. Very easy, and you subscribe. We'll tell you when the new episodes drop. And always keep it right here at Podcast One.